Hello, I'm Christina, astrology coach at Heart Horizon Astrology and host of Astrology with Heart. This is episode 8 of the podcast, and we're going to be talking about the full moon we have coming up in Leo. It's going to be at 13 degrees and 3 minutes, and it will happen on the 1st of February at 10:08 p.m. and that's GMT. Please note I live in the United Kingdom, so if you are somewhere else in the world, you will need to make some adjustments. It's always a good idea when you're kind of watching or listening to the podcast to have your chart to hand. So if you've got one, great, pull it up on your screen, print it off, have it with you. If you don't and you'd really like one, you can go to my website. The details are below. And you're just going to need your date of birth, the place of birth, and as close as you can to the time. That will create a chart for you, and it's going to be absolute gold when you're listening. So pull it up every time. Righty. If you do have a chart there to hand, keep your eye on between around about 9 and 17 of the fixed signs. That's Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. This is where all the big bangs are going to be happening. Righty, so let's dive in and talk a little bit about Leo. So Leo is a fixed fire sign. It's, I'm going to read this out to you because I think this is brilliant. Leo is the psychological process of becoming the person you already are on the inside without apology, without performance, without shrinking. It is the courage to be witnessed. Isn't that beautiful? Jeffrey Wolf Green tells us that it's very much about self-actualization and the energy of creativity and creating. So as a fixed fire sign, you'll find that Leo it's not the flame that flickers. It really holds the flame. It's very intense. It's a very passionate sign. And I think the word performance is kind of a big one, because if you are quite Leoine or you know someone that it is, you'll probably notice that they very much like to be the center of attention. And due to Leo's ruler being the sun being the center of our solar system, you can see where this psychologically comes in. So at its core, Leo represents the part of the psyche that wants to really express what is real. It's really very heart-centric. It's very passionate, but it's very heart-centric energy, and prefers authenticity or authentic expression, and just loves to be noticed. It loves to be seen. But we've got this kind of, and I'll get into it when I'm talking about the shadow, this kind of balance between being seen and being noticed, but not feeling that it needs to perform for attention. The creative actualization impulse teams up with kind of a narcissism and almost an egocentric focus. So I kind of see Leo. So if you look at a chart and you have these 12 slices and you follow them from 1, so where you're following from 1 to kind of getting to 5 is a lot of self-development, and it peaks at that 5th house, what Leo and the Sun rule. It peaks there. So it's a bit like the blown up balloon that's ready to burst with expression. It's this pinnacle of itself. So it can create a little bit of kind of this narcissistic focus almost. I want to spend a little bit of time here talking about the shadow, or the slightly unhealthy side of the Leo expression. And then I'm going to jump into talking about the axis, which is between Leo and Aquarius, because every full moon, we kind of look at this balance between the two. So let's talk a little bit about that shadow. So Leo really has a core need to be seen for what it is, or for who I am. And when that need is met in the Leo archetype, it is warm, radiant, expressive, generous, creative. It's that heart to heart kind of really warm emotionally. But when it's not met, when there's not that kind of natural, almost validation or confirmation, it can be quite almost the opposite of all of those things. So it will step back, it will detach from the heart, it will become inconsistent with expression. I think the worst one is it will seek that validation elsewhere. So when it's not being met within its environment, when it's not being met internally, it's going to look elsewhere for that validation. And with Leo's sun ruling that 5th house, the house of love affairs, you can kind of see where it can be pulled to have, to be looking for that attention in a affair or secret kind of situation. So when Leo feels that it can't be that kind of peak of itself, it almost feels that the heart is fractured in some senses, and it starts to vie for attention. It starts to perform for attention. So it's not that very easy, natural, from the heart kind of generous kind of expression. Instead, it feels it needs to gain it. So it needs to attain your attention. It needs to create drama for attention. It can really seek validation over a kind of a connective form of validation, and it can definitely lean towards overcompensation when it's not feeling secure at its center. And there is a deep, deep fear in Leo of not quite being enough. Not in the way that Saturn doesn't feel enough, because there's a distance. More in that it feels that whatever it's expressing is not being met, it's not landing well, it's not being received. And so it starts to kind of panic that it needs to do more and be more. And obviously the opposite side of that is I'm not enough. I need to be more because I'm not enough as I am naturally. And it fears that kind of not being seen, not being noticed. And if we look at this in in childhood, that can grow from where maybe parents were distracted or not available in some sense, maybe physically not available, or definitely emotionally not available to give that time and attention. When there was a lack of response to any kind of authentic expression or an achievement, or a sense of, let's say, that performance side of Leo means that Leos can be might like to sing a lot or dance a lot or act a lot. So if there's not a recognition of that was wonderful, or you were so good, or that was amazing, they can kind of shrink a little bit. Even actually with others in the household, so maybe other siblings in the household, where they might feel overshadowed, and so they're not noticed, or they're a little bit dismissed. That can definitely cause in the childhood for the person to feel that love, that performance is love, and that I'm not enough, and so I've got to really be constantly kind of very vocal and very loud and very entertaining in order to gain that attention. I hope that gives you some sense of Leo. I think the other word I want to say is confident, and this is something I've always found and I have a lot of family members that are Leo suns, and they have this real natural verve, this natural confidence. Like, you know, in a social setting, they can be quite expressive, definitely. They're confident in their manner, they're confident in their speech, they're confident when they make decisions. And this is some of that fixed energy as well. And especially with one of my cousins, he's a real kind of big energy, and he really leads the conversations, and he's got that fiery passion. You can get him into it quite quickly. But the generosity is really second to none with Leos. It's so beautiful. So let us take a look at the charts, right? So with every full moon, we have the moon in the sign, in this case Leo, and then directly opposite, 180 degrees, we have the sun. And the sun in this case is in the sign of Aquarius. So we've got Leo's sun, fixed, fire, masculine. And then we've got it opposite, Aquarius, fixed, air sign, masculine also. So let's just look at some of the kind of the flavor of the differences between those before we seek a sense of balance. So Leo is very it's very self-centered, so it's very subjective as an energy, whereas Aquarius is very outward looking, it's very objective. So Leo is very much about me, who I am, what I want, what I need, what my heart feels, how I express from myself as an individual. Whereas Aquarius is more almost pensive, intellectual, cerebral, very much about out there. So you've got Leo ruling the 5th house, which is kind of the end, as I said before, of the self-development houses, before we start to move into relationship realm. Aquarius then rules the 11th. It's right near the end, and it's very much about out there, everything and everyone. So we see Aquarius in opposition as being very much about humanity and the collective, also ruling groups and networks. But humanity, I just want us to stick there for a moment. And if we think about a lot of humanitarian causes and a lot of work that non-profits do, that would be very much Aquarius's realm. So you can see really where you get this opposition at play, where you've got the internalized kind of warm, passionate, heart-centric giving and expression from Leo, and then Aquarius being a lot more kind of cooler, level-headed, focus being more outward and on others or humanity as a whole, in a more intellectual, cerebral, and some people don't like this word, but I'm going to use it in kind of the sense of detachment, because it's not really so much about that ego level with Aquarius. It can detach from it. So it's not about what I want as it is for Leo, what I am, what I want and what I am and what I give and what I express. It's more about, well, what do we as a collective want? What do we as humanity want? What do we need right now? You know, and where are there places where there is inequality happening? You know, where can I make humanity better tomorrow than it is today? And I say tomorrow like that because Aquarius is a very future focused sign. So Leo is very much in the now, and Aquarius is, well, what can I do today for tomorrow? I think that Leo definitely fuels that initial fire, that lights that initial fire of passion, that things need to come from here. I must want to do this. I must feel passionate about doing this. Feeding it into Aquarius to bring about that sense of wisdom, and also maybe to bring some of that kind of down to a more objective fashion and look at, well, okay, you want this and you feel very passionate about this, but hold for a moment and let's check that what you want matches what we need. So you've definitely got a bit of a fire and ice going on, I think. So So Leo very much must create, and I want to keep that really at the forefront of your mind. There's got to be that creative initial spark happening, and also that sense of validation, that I'm going to say that connective validation, rather than playing for it, but knowing in this really natural, confident fashion, I can create something that's very, very powerful. I can create something that's very beautiful. And the validation comes not from me, look at me, but from this is what I have given. Another thing I want to add here is that with Leo, it's very much kind of a self-play expression. But with Aquarius, it's very much a group activity. And so let's say we take this into some kind of organization, some kind of workplace that's maybe doing something for humanity. Each individual is creating. Each individual is that Leo energy that is giving, that is expressing. And the validation comes not from the you are fantastic, although you can do that as well, more from look what each of us have done that has achieved this as a whole, and we can see it now out in the world. So there's quite a layer to it, which I think is really fascinating with these two signs. So to get to that space of balance, I think you need to be thinking in that way of what can I give that will go beyond me? What can I give that I can attach what other people give? And I think we can kind of feed this into everyone is passionate about different things. Everyone has can express in different ways and express through the skills and the strengths that they have. And so in some kind of organization or in some kind of group, each person can give something quite individual, which makes a beautiful end result. And I'll give you one example. Many years ago, I worked with a group of people on a set of events for a year for TEDx, so independent speakers. And each of us was quite different. Each of us had our own, again, strengths and skills. And each of us had a chance to express or to give what we had and what we were very passionate about, working into this plan for the entire event. And so when we got to the day of the event, the entirety of the event was everybody's individual giving, everybody's individual efforts. And that was the beauty of it. So that's the sense of the individual coming something bigger, something greater, something in a group style or a network or humanity. So let's take a little look at the chart here, and I just want to show you the full chart, which I know is quite spicy, quite complex there, but I will move on to the other one soon. What I want to show you in here is that absolutely crazy Aquarian stellium going on. If you look to the bottom there where the sun is, you're going to see Pluto, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Mars all in the sign of Aquarius. So despite the fact that this is a Leo moon, energetically it's highly Aquarian. It's highly Aquarian. And if I'm going to jump onto the other chart now. Hold on. And so you'll see in this chart now, it's taken away some of those Aquarian planets because they're not actually in full conjunction, but they are still going to play, because anytime you have a stellium, a number of planets close together, they're kind of going to kick off each other like dominoes. So they do all play a role, starting with that Pluto. So let's talk a little bit here about that. Let's talk about the moon being opposite to Mars, which is at 7 Aquarius, and Venus, which is the other side, is at 19. And we've been talking about the age of Aquarius for some time in the astrology community, moving from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. And when we start to see full moons that really kick off stelliums like that, we start to see what I feel is quite a big shift, or I could say download. So, we've got this we've got this shift into Aquarian territory, which is being much more intellectual and cerebral. It focus on technology, AI, robotics, AR, augmented reality, all of those coming up, affecting reality itself. We also have this ability to be a lot more objective and to separate ourselves almost from some of the emotional side, to be a little bit more in our heads. I think some of the wonderful things about Aquarius is, it's known as a sign to be quite weird. It's more the fact that it doesn't look at things in the mainstream. It looks at things from a very fresh perspective. And so in the tarot deck, one of the visions I always get every time I see it is the upside down man. Life can look very different if we look at it from a different viewpoint, a different angle or perspective. And Aquarius gives that freshness. So it's quite different to what would typically be the case. And because of that, and because of this, this kind of technological aspect, and also it's very involved in scientific breakthroughs, it's also quite an innovative energy. It brings a lot of new. And in astrology, we also associate it with the higher mind. And so this is where some of this innovation comes from. It's like these major, almost cosmic downloads that happen. And they are just really unexpected, really sudden, and very shifting. They bring about change, and normally quite cataclysmic change. So I call it like a bit of a thunderclap. And with this electric outpouring, because Aquarius's other side is also this electricity. So we're living in a world now, and I think we're all very much becoming aware of what is happening in an interconnective sense, that everything happens and it has a knock-on effect with something else. I think as well that we are becoming aware of the globe as a whole. We've got so much access now through the internet, that we're not just getting local news now, we're getting global news now. We're not just seeing what's happening in the weather and the climate around us, we're seeing what is happening everywhere. And so we're getting this really broad sweep view where we're understanding that actually it's not just us anymore in our own little worlds, i.e. Leo, it's not just our own little worlds anymore, it's the entire world, and everything has an interconnective effect. It has a dynamic that we can't really get away from. And I think with that too, we start to see the different plights in the world, that especially if we're in if we're living in a country where we have access and we have a sense of freedom, that we realize that in comparison there are other people in the world that don't have that. They don't have that access. They don't have that freedom that we have. They don't have the same rights to choose who they are and what they do. And this is also where we get the Aquarian. I see that we have this inequality. I see that we have differences. I see that maybe I have access and other people don't. And I want to work towards a world where we all have access. I think now as well, we don't have, we can't really be ignorant to anything that's going on. If we look at things from a political or economic or even the climate, we're seeing that fallout now. We're seeing it happen. So even I live in the United Kingdom, I don't see some of the extent of climate change in the kind of the weather. I don't see it in tidal waves or major storms or major flooding. Some of it, but at a very low level. But it's when we start looking beyond our own local space that we start to see that actually it is having a big impact, and it's having an impact in other parts of the world, and it's having an impact on other people, and it's really having a detrimental effect on their lives. And changes that we make here also affect people over there. And this is why I talk about that interconnectedness. And I watched this wonderful program on the Amazon rainforest and how integral the rainforest is to the entire global climate system. So I think, we don't have that ignorance anymore. We do have access to all of this knowledge, and we do have this greater awareness, and that is really starting to become very much quite big and quite central now when we're seeing, especially with Pluto moving into Aquarius. Last thing I want to mention about Aquarius here, I always liken Aquarius to the Matrix. Actually love that film, but really because of the kind of awakening that happened, and this, seeing that when technology can get to such a place where we cannot tell what is real from what is not, and this virtual place, and this idea of a software program. And I think now when you see where technology has gotten to, it doesn't take much of a leap of the imagination to see that, actually we could live in a matrix, or we could be very close to that actually happening. It's a possibility now, whereas maybe when the film originally came out, which I think was something like 1998, it seemed far-fetched. It was wow and impactful and shocking, and it seemed far-fetched, but now I don't think it does. I also just want to mention the very, very last thing about Aquarius is stripping things back to authenticity, the ultimate truth. It's a sword of truth. And our most authentic selves go back to our original DNA. And I also think about the amount of layers of conditioning, layers of conditioning that we may or may not be aware of. Like I'm very conscious that I'm born, I was born in England, that I have Italian heritage, that I have a family that's very traditional and upholding some of that Italian heritage, right? And so you get these kind of layers of conditioning, and that where I grew up and the kind of schools I was in and colleges I was in and people I've surrounded myself in all have an impact on who I am. But they are not who I am. They have impacted on it, and they become the conditioning for it, but they are not me at my core. And so if you really think about that in your own life, think about all those kind of layers of conditioning that come in from every little kind of happening in your life, every stage in your life. Do you really know who you are without them? And is there really any way that we can get rid of them? And so kind of DNA is the most, basic kind of foundational part of ourselves. But part of the Aquarian archetype is to reconnect with its own authenticity and to push away and almost kind of break away, detach from all of those layers of conditioning that have made it something that it's not. I know that's a huge thing to think about, but it's really wonderful if you kind of get a chance to dive into it somewhat. So I want to leave you with a couple of things. One of them is, I always end on a few questions, and I think especially with this axis with the Leo-Aquarius, I think that kind of getting the brain going is going to be really rewarding. And so I'm just going to mention 6 here, but I have tons on my blog post. The link is below. If you really want to kind of explore some of that in your head, please do take a look and read through some of those questions, and even have a journal or something with you, have your book with you, and write them down and let them kind of filter into your head when it's ready. So here's a few. So the first one is, what does my mind want that my mind keeps talking me out of? It's fascinating, isn't it? That, you know, the heart and the mind. Where have I been brave in love, and where have I been holding back? So remember, like that Leo is brave. Leo is confident. Even if he doesn't feel it the whole way on the inside, externally, Leo is confident and it will go for things. It's a fire sign. Aquarius is also a fixed sign, but it's not a fire sign. It's very much in its head, and it can really talk itself out of kind of where its heart's at. What would it look like if I chose joy without apology? Like really like living in that moment, that expression of pure joy is very Leoine. So there's a few here about play, which I just love these, and I'm gonna mention these. What would I do if I trusted my own brilliance? Isn't that lovely? Where can I bring more play, more pleasure, or creativity into my life? Life can be very full on, it can be very complex, it can be very serious and weighty. But Leo reminds us that life is also about pleasure and play and creativity and hobbies and things that we just love to do. Remember that. So from the heart, where is the pleasure here? And what can I do that is more pleasurable and creative in my life right now? So as I say, if you want to see some more, go onto the blog post. The link is below. So I like to end the podcast with one ritual, and there are plenty more rituals on the blog post too, so please do click on there if you want to see some more. But I think it makes so much sense for a Leo moon to have a ritual with fire. So if you've got a candle, grab a candle, light that candle, grab a notebook or even a note, you know, just a sticky note, and I want you to have a think about and write down what dims your light. You know, what dims your light and what do you need to remove from your life? And when you've written that down, to burn it in the flames of the candle, obviously very, very safely, and just see what happens, see what the universe brings you. So thank you again for listening in. I do appreciate it and love you all very much. Every link, everything I've spoken about is below, so please do take a look. I would love for you to have a comment, pop a review on there, or even follow me. I'm on Instagram and I'm on TikTok, and I'd love to hear from you, whatever feels good for you, and we'll be back again soon.